The development of new technology is the driving force behind long-run economic growth. Firms develop new technologies because they expect to receive profits from a new invention. This means that the profitability of new ideas plays an important role in influencing economic growth. To encourage firms to produce new ideas, most countries provide protection for their inventions, called intellectual property rights. These come in a number of forms, such as patents on new inventions or copyrights on songs or books. Intellectual property rights means that firms can treat ideas just like any other piece of property they own, such as a machine or a piece of land. However, intellectual property rights differ in important ways from rights over other property. For example, intellectual property rights usually only last for a fixed period of time, 20 years in the case of US patents. While granting intellectual property rights may encourage innovation, economists have long recognized that this protection comes at a cost. Intellectual property rights essentially mean that a firm has a monopoly over a particular idea. When firms have monopoly power, that means that their buyers pay higher prices than they would otherwise. While monopoly power allows the firm to make larger profits, society as a whole may be worse off. Thus, the value of intellectual property protection comes down to whether paying higher prices today is worth it to encourage the development of new technologies for tomorrow. Because intellectual property rights embody this trade-off, there is an active debate over how strong these protections should be. For example, should the length of patent protection be extended or shortened? Answering questions like this is difficult because in recent decades, changes in intellectual property laws have been rare. However, looking further back into history, when intellectual property systems were just developing, we can see that countries were regularly experimenting with different systems. For example, in the early 20th century, the US government experimented with limiting intellectual property protection for aircraft manufacturers after the First World War, only to reinstate them a few years later. By studying historical experiments like this one, we can gain a better understanding of the costs and benefits of intellectual property protection, which can be used to make better policy decisions. To see some examples of how NYU Stern economists are using history to better understand intellectual property, see Spillover Effects of IP Protection in the Interwar Aircraft Industry by Walker Hanlon.